Rather of starting with a loud explosion, it started with a whisper, an utterance emanating from the stone itself. Dr. Althea Buscus, a geobiologist whose beliefs were previously referred to as fanciful archaeology, had been listening to the Amazon for a decade at that point. The rocks were not the only thing she was investigating. She was also analyzing the atmosphere of the environment. Her team had installed a network of seismometers that were very sensitive over a basin in the northern Amazon that was so remote and unknown that the local indigenous groups referred to it as the land that dreams. Despite the fact that they were monitoring minute tectonic movements, the data that they received was hard to interpret. The ground was not only moving, rather, it was rather hollow. The first scans indicated a cavern system that was thought to be bigger than Switzerland, and was located between 500 and 1,500 meters under the green canopy. This emptiness was so huge that it defied belief. As soon as the crew made their cautious statement, the media began referring to it as the Amazonian Abyss Valley du Luminaria, which literally translates to Valley of the Luminary, was the name that lasted. And it was derived from the old stories of the Akuana people who lived in the area. A combination of human ingenuity and pure grit was required to complete the drop. The entrance, which seemed to be a perfectly harmless pit that was hardly bigger than a vehicle, was really a jagged mouth that led into complete darkness. When the first group, which was commanded by Dr. Vesquet, continued its descent into the abyss, the lights that they were wearing did nothing more than delay the onset of the darkness. It was not until they triggered the high-powered LiDAR that was installed on the drone that they realized the extent of their hubris. It was not dark within the cavern. The lighting was on. The whole area, which extended beyond than their sensors could record, was lighted by a phenomena that was just stunning. A gentle, ethereal, blue-green light emanated from the cavern walls and ceiling, where billions of bioluminescent mushrooms were clinging to the walls and ceiling in enormous gardens that cascaded above them. I was referring to the luminary. Long, delicate mineral structures that were not quite stalactites hung from the ceiling like crystalline. They were transmitting and intensifying the glow of the fungi, and they cast beautiful patterns that were moving on the floor of the cavern far below. In addition to being fresh and clean, the air carried a perfume that was reminiscent of ozone, damp stone, and something else, something that was both old and verdant. On the other hand, the real surprise came when they peered below. By no means was this a desolate and sterile cave. They were suspended in the air over a vanished planet. There was an underground jungle that flourished in the darkness that never ended. Trees that were tall and pale, with leaves that were a deep burgundy and silvery, color skyward, their roots winding their way through a terrain that was filled with phosphorescent mosses and strange flowers that were ghostly pale and flowered without ever being exposed to sunlight. A river that was sluggish and winding, with water that was completely transparent and black in color, sparkled with a light that was reflected from above, reminding one of a ribbon of liquid obsidian that was adorned with stars. After that, the flora and wildlife appeared. Scenarios were ephemeral and ghostly in nature. The dark river was entered by a monster that had 6 legs, was amphibious, and was the size of an otter. Its skin was like jet that had been polished. There were moths that were quietly flying through the fungal forests. Their wingspans were bigger than that of an eagle, and they were decorated with brilliant patterns that seemed like eyes. Having been shut off from the surface for millions of years, the environment was a marvel of evolutionary isolation. It was like a lifeboat from a primordial past. Following that, they discovered the writing, the geometric patterns and inscriptions that were carved into the smooth surface of an enormous wall of obsidian that stretched for hundreds of meters, demonstrated an astounding level of sophistication. They did not like any other pre-Columbian script that was known. The team's archaeolinguist, Dr. Kenji Tanaka, came dangerously close to crying. He stutteringly said, "This isn't just writing," as his voice was hushed in respectful silence over the communications. "It is mathematics. As you say, this is astronomy. This language is a language of pure concepts." Glyphs were used to tell a tale. They talked about a race who were referred to as the children of the stone seed, and they didn't construct this cavern. Rather, they discovered it. They reported a catastrophe on the surface being referred to as a great burning sky, and their intentional descent, not as refugees, but as protectors. In addition to being guardians of the world heart, they were also the keepers of a wisdom that the surface population had forgotten. The ultimate find was made precisely in the middle of the cavern. There was a solitary, monolithic edifice that stood in the middle of a grove of the most highly light mushrooms, which was surrounded by the spectral forest. It was neither a mausoleum nor a cathedral. The object seemed to be a flawless, smooth spherical made of an unidentified, non-crystalline substance that was 20 meters in diameter and appeared to have fused into the bedrock itself. It was warm to the touch and produced a deep, resonant hum that was felt more than heard. It was a vibration that appeared to coordinate with the pulse of the cavern itself. These characteristics occurred simultaneously. The world heart was shown here, that which gave rise to the mythology. After being questioned, the Equine elders merely nodded their heads. They hadn't been in the dark. When they recounted their legends, they described a time when the sky and the stone were one, and the place where rivers are created was the place where the heart of the planet beat. It is no longer sufficient to describe the Vale da Luminaria as a geological marvel. In the annals of human history, this is the most significant archaeological and biological find ever made. Our concept of the peopling of the Americas, the resiliency and adaptation of life, and the very essence of the Amazon being rewritten as a result of this. It has been discovered that the rainforest that is located above is not the lungs of the globe. The exterior foliage is all that is involved. The genuine heart, which is old and wise, has just been discovered, and it is pounding a steady, regular pulse from the depths of the darkness below. And the whisper that it has been making is now a call, questioning all that we believed. We understood about our planet, our history, and our specific position within it. The journey has just started, and it's already fun. A seismic shock was transmitted across the scientific world as a result of the finding of the world heart. This shock was so powerful that it made the original discovery of the caverns seem like a minor Over the course of many days, the crew was unable to accomplish much more than establish a base camp on a vast, level stretch of rock that overlooked the sphere. Their instruments were rendered worthless due to the sphere's flawless, non-reflective surface. The light, music, and radio waves were all absorbed by it. As far as all intents and purposes were concerned, it was a flawless black box. Mr. Vasquez, on the other hand, was paying attention to the hum. The frequency of the vibration was so high that it echoed in the bone marrow, making it a subauditory vibration. It was she who first spotted the patterns. The luminous mushrooms would pulse in waves that were soft, and the hum would move back and forth in resonance, almost like a call and response. A discussion was taking place between the sphere and the whole ecology of the cavern. She told Kenji Tanaka one evening, their faces illuminated by the strange brightness. It's not a structure, and Tanaka agreed with her statement. It is a living creature, or a portion of one. All of these elements, Caverns, the mushrooms, the trees, and the river are interconnected and form a single, enormous coexistence. The nexus may be found in the world. Tanaka, who had been meticulously transcribing the obsidian markings, looked at the person and nodded. The texts allude to something called the Song of the Stone. These individuals assert that the first guardians acquired the ability to listen with their feet and speak with their breath. A fresh sense of amazement began to emerge in his eyes as he gazed at the sphere. What if it's not a language we can read, but one we have to feel? The breakthrough was brought about by an unanticipated source, which was the water. Dr. Aris Torne, the head hydrologist for the group, was doing an examination of the dark and crystalline river. While he discovered that it was free of any surface life pollutants, he discovered that it was teeming with a species of silica-based microbes that had not been discovered before. Even more astounding is the fact that these microbes were organized in intricate, changing lattice that, on a tiny scale, mimicked the geometric patterns of the obsidian symbols. The river is more than just water, Eris said, his voice shaking with enthusiasm as he made the announcement. It is a never-ending stream of data. The glyphs are not only instructions, rather, they constitute a live, breathing computer may be found throughout this whole cavern. The fungus serve as its neurotransmitters, the river serves as its circulatory and information system, and the world heart serves as its processor. The initial interaction. As a result of this notion, They made the decision to take a different strategy. They would make an effort to engage with the system rather than engaging in activities such as scanning or probing the sphere. Hydrophones were used in order to capture the resonant hum of the sphere, as well as the delicate clicking noises that were produced by the bioluminescent mushrooms. Using Tanaka's interpretations of the glyphs, they played these recordings back into the river at the place where it came from, a crack near the base of the sphere. They did this in order to gradually modulate the frequencies. Nothing occurred for a considerable amount of time. The chamber then became completely quiet. The hum came to an end. There was a faint ember glow that emanated from the fungal luminescence. All of the members of the squad managed to hold their breath at the same time. Then, a single, thin beam of pure white light emerged from the tip of the sphere, and it projected a complicated hologram that was three-dimensional onto the air in front of them. But it was not a map of any sky that could be seen from Earth. It was a star chart. The constellations were foreign and unrecognizable to me. Within its core, there was a single, dazzling star that pulsed. While they were watching, the image zoomed in on that star system, bringing into focus a planet that was bright blue-green in color. Within a breathtakingly accelerated timescale, they saw the formation of continents, the flourishing of life, and the rise and collapse of civilizations. They saw the catastrophe that had been described in the glyphs. It was not an asteroid or an ice age, but rather a horrific planetary conflict that ravaged the land and leached poison into the atmosphere. The story was easy to understand. There was no indigenous population of the children of the stone seed on Earth. They were the last people who had survived from an interplanetary colony that had vanished. They had utilized their sophisticated knowledge of geoengineering and biology to conserve the remaining remnants of their knowledge as well as the environment of their adoptive Earth, deep below the crust of the planet. It was not a cave. Rather, the Vale da Luminaria was a refuge, a time capsule, and a library all rolled into one amazing location. Another change occurred in the hologram. At this point, it displayed a real-time picture of their own base camp, with their faces staring up at the projection in a surprised expression. After that, it zoomed out, revealing the Amazon jungle, the continents, and the whole rotating globe that is home to the planet Earth. There was a fresh set of glyphs that emerged, and this time they were simpler. Tanaka's voice was hardly audible when he performed the translation. It is written that the gardeners have left them. There is still the garden. It is now you who are the guardians. There is no way to stop the music. Please pay attention to the warning. The caution and the option to choose it was the warning that turned out to be the next piece of the jigsaw. It was then that the World Heart started projecting data onto the walls of the cavern, which was a flood of knowledge concerning the vital signals of the Earth. They saw the upward trend in global temperatures, the acidification of the seas, and the spiraling rates of extinction, all of which were depicted in the glyphs in a manner that was both artistic and cruel. For millennia, the creature had been keeping a close eye on the state of health on the planet as its host. It was a diagnosis from an intelligence that had seen the death of a planet in the past, and it was a mirror that was held up to mankind. The globe above was, of course, breaking apart into pieces. Access was required by the governments. Unutilized patents in the fields of biology and technology were discovered by corporations. The military discovered a vital secret that had an unfathomable amount of worth. With their finding becoming a geopolitical powder keg, the research team, which had previously been praised, was now under an enormous amount of pressure. When Dr. Vasquez stepped in front of the World Heart, he could feel its hum returning to its normal, patient beat. She had now grasped the concept. When it came to the Vale da Luminaria, there was no award to be won. It was like a test. The cave, the extraterrestrial sphere, and even the history that had been lost were not the genuine discoveries that were made. It was the option that was provided to me, a live example of perfect symbiosis with a planet, as well as a stern warning from a race that had failed, was the gift that the children of the stone seed had bestowed upon them. In reality, the vast and mysterious world that lay under the Amazon was not a remnant. It turned out to be a teacher. In addition, the first thing that it taught was that in order to become a guardian, one must first learn to listen. This includes learning to listen to the song of the stone, the whisper of the river, and the quiet, yearning pulse of the planet itself. What they had discovered was no longer the focus of the narrative. Rather, it shifted to focus on what they intended to do with it. Right now, the destiny of two planets, one of which had been lost and the other of which was still battling for its survival, was in their hands. The next chapter would not be carved in stone, but rather in the deeds of every single person on the planet.